Today, we're doing something completely different. We're ditching all software and instead focusing on what sounds we can get from some incredible vintage analog synthesizers. Let's check it out. These days, you can use your computer or iPad to get incredible live keys sounds. But most of the sounds we take for granted now came from groundbreaking analog synthesizers of the past, like this one, the Roland Juno-60. This is a collector's item level analog synthesizer that commonly goes for thousands of dollars online, and it is a privilege and a joy to be able to play one in person. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it. And I'm really excited to be able to do that right now. The premise of today's video is to take the software out of the equation and give you a taste of some of the roots of everything that we do now. We have several vintage analog synthesizers we're going to be swapping in, and I'm going to be playing some of my favorite sounds on these synthesizers. You might recognize some of these sounds yourself, and then the next time you're listening to a modern worship song, you might be able to call out, oh, I remember that sound. It came from one of those vintage synthesizers. Understanding the history of synthesis and how we got to the incredible place we're in today will make you a better keys player and sound designer. So let's start off with one of my favorite synths of all time, this Juno-60. So the signal chain for this video is very simple. We're gonna have an analog synthesizer run into my Strymon Big Sky reverb pedal and then straight into the recorder. Not going to do anything else, so you're going to be hearing the original sound of the analog synthesizer itself, and then I'll add some awesome reverb from the Big Sky. Starting off on the Juno-60 with Bank 1, Patch 1, which is this awesome synth string sound. And the Juno-60 has an incredible resonant filter in the VCF section here. And the resonance on this is absolutely gorgeous. Let's go to patch number 2, Bank 1. It's another string pad. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of Hall reverb from the Big Sky. Bring back the attack time and the release time a little bit here. Nice. Absolutely gorgeous. It's such an expressive instrument to play. Add a little bit of shimmer. Now there's some incredible presets here in the Juno-60, and we don't have time to go through all of them, but really quickly I'll just go through this first bank. you're not familiar, the Juno-60 is one of the greatest analog synthesizers of all time. It was released by Roland in 1982 and was only available on the market until 1984 when it was replaced by the Juno-106. This is a 6-voice polyphonic analog synthesizer that sounds absolutely incredible. At the time, it was pretty groundbreaking. It had presets, it sounded great, it had a great filter, some really great controls to be able to dial in your sound. It technically featured stereo mode, but that really only took effect when you turned the chorus effect on. Otherwise, it was in mono. When it was released, it made a big impact on the music industry. It was used in lots of techno and house music in the 80s and 90s, all sorts of pop music. And more recently, it's come back into fashion in a big way in pop music, in R&B and hip hop music, and in worship music as well. Lots of artists, groups like Hillsong, Bethel, have used the Juno-60 on their recent albums because it sounds fantastic. Next up, one of my all-time favorite synths. This is the Yamaha DX7. Now, I know at the beginning of the video I said analog synthesizers. This is actually a digital synthesizer. In fact, it's the first digital synthesizer that was actually commercially successful. It was released in 1983, and I think we can honestly blame the innovations found in the DX7 for killing the analog synthesizer trend that had been predominant up to that point. The DX7 relied on frequency modulation synthesis, commonly abbreviated as FM synthesis, and it created sounds that nobody had thought were possible before. Now, the DX7 is notoriously difficult to program. You get this tiny screen and a bunch of buttons. It's definitely not nearly as much of an intuitive tactile experience as the analog synths that preceded it. But because it sounded like nothing else, it was incredibly successful. Today, the DX7 has returned to prominence and popularity because, honestly, still nothing else sounds quite like it. There are iconic presets, and if you take the time to learn how to program it, you can also get incredible glassy bell sounds, really bitey, chimey strings, and some really cool pads as well. Let me show you just a couple of the presets that I love on the DX7. Gotta stop to say, this is my absolute favorite digital EP sound of all time. This tank right here is the last great analog synthesizer made by Roland from 1986 to 1989. It is the Super JX-10. I absolutely love this synth. I have it in my home studio and it sounds absolutely incredible. Now, we were moving into the digital age by the time this was released, so it was designed to directly compete with synthesizers like the FM synth, the DX7 from Yamaha. So it definitely influenced the design of the architecture. You notice instead of faders or sliders on top, we now have buttons and an on-screen menu. So it's a little bit more difficult to program this guy than some of the earlier analog synths, but the end result and sound quality is absolutely incredible. Now, the factory presets in the original JX-10 were created by Dan D'Souza and Eric Persing, whose name you might recognize as the founder of Spectrasonics, creators of Omnisphere, Keyscape, Trillion, Stylus. Absolutely incredible sound design in the factory presets in this synth. So incredible that I'm just going to use a few of these presets to demonstrate what the JX-10 can do for you. Let's add a little bit of reverb from the big sky. So far, we're just working in the A bank, but there's A through H banks of patches available, and they all sound incredible. I like the name of this one. It's called Obese Fifths. This next one I've got in front of me is kind of a cheat, but we're still going to talk about it. This is the Behringer Odyssey, and this is a clone of a synthesizer called the Arp Odyssey that was released in 1972 and was on the market until 1981. Now, the original Arp Odyssey was known for incredible arpeggiated sounds, as you could probably guess by the name, but it also made all sorts of different spaceship sounds and awesome lead sounds as well. It has no presets, and as you can tell, there is a lot going on the front panel. So I've got it hooked up to the big sky. I'm just going to play around a little bit with some different things. You're going to hear all sorts of interesting sounds from the Odyssey, but it is a ton of fun to experiment with. Let's check it out. turn on the Arp. The Odyssey is a wild beast, and honestly, no matter how much time you spend trying to learn how to program on it, you're still never quite sure what's going to happen until you touch a slider. So the next time you're listening to a modern worship song that your church is going to be playing, see if you can pick out characters from some of these vintage synths or sounds that were inspired by them. If you can't afford to go out there and buy one of these vintage synthesizers for yourself, I'd recommend that you check out Sunday Keys. We'll put a link in the description to this all-in-one resource for worship keys players. There are sounds inside of Sunday Keys featuring samples from every vintage synth that I demonstrated for you today. So if you want to capture that sound, you can with Sunday Keys. Thanks for watching this video. Leave a comment with your own favorite vintage synth or your favorite preset that I demonstrated for you today. It's got such a good filter, but that